How many of you were excited about GDP when you woke up this morning? How many of you were like, I'm going to make a big contribution to GDP today? I can feel it. Of course not. It's ridiculous.
You have to actually redesign our economy. You have to like change the rules so that we don't value ourselves solely as economic inputs, but we value ourselves intrinsically. Like maybe we're worth something even if our truck starts driving itself, or the AI is better than us at reading the radiology film, or my mall closes and like I'm a 39-year-old woman who works in the mall. So we have to start looking at valuing ourselves at some other mechanism than the marketplace, because the marketplace is about to turn on us in epic, catastrophic fashion. So here are some things that are at all-time or multi-decade highs right now in the United States of America. Suicide, drug overdoses, anxiety and depression, mental problems, financial insecurity, people being unable to pay their bills. All of these things are at record highs. And one thing I know you've talked about in the past that I think you'd really find fascinating. So there have been studies as to what happens to your mind when you can't pay your bills. And when you can't pay your bills, you're like stressing out. It's like, if I pay this, I can't pay that. And there's like always the time money trade-off. It's like, oh, if I spend extra time commuting, maybe I can save a couple bucks. And so what it does is it actually constrains your bandwidth to a point that your functional IQ goes down by 13 points, or one standard deviation. So just if you say to someone, hey, here's a bill you can't pay, and then you give them an IQ test, their score actually goes down by 13 points. A lot. That's like a really huge effect. Yeah. And so what we're doing right now, Joe, is we're actually making our population less rational, less reasonable, more impulsive, more subject to bad ideas, nastier, more subject to things like racism and misogyny too, because it turns out what happens with most of us is you need executive functioning to resist like racist and misogynistic impulses. And so if I make you cash strapped and make it so you can't pay your bills, you're actually more likely to be like, yeah, blame them. So what we're talking about, again, it's not this speculative future. It's that we've been doing this for years, and it's actually pushing our population into a mindset of scarcity, of nastiness. And that's why universal basic income is so crucial, because it gets the boot off of people's throats, and it replaces the mindset of scarcity with a mindset of abundance and rationality and optimism and capacity.
Of the economy to what you call human-centered capitalism. It's the second of your big three policies, Medicare for all being the third. We've heard of that. You say the emphasis right now on corporate profits isn't working. Human-centered capitalism focuses on three primary principles. One, people are more important than money. Two, a dollar is not the economic unit. People are in that case. Three, markets exist to serve the common goals and values of society. This is now getting into, I guess, economic theory. I don't know if I particularly get it, and maybe a lot of people watching at home don't get it. So how would you like this to change? How would this change daily life, I guess, as we know it? What changes for businesses or jobs or how we pay for things if a dollar is not the economic unit?
Well, so right now we're in another trap, which is that GDP is going up and up even as more Iowans and Americans are getting left behind. And you can see it in the stats. Life expectancy is declining, drug addiction is climbing, suicides are at record highs. Our labor force participation rate is at a multi-decade low. It's the same levels as El Salvador and the Dominican Republic.
Education is falling compared to the rest of the world as well, those sorts of things.
Yeah, so if you look at those measurements, you can see we're not doing very well. But then if you look at headline GDP, you're like, oh, things are going great. So we have the wrong measuring sticks right now, and what human-centered capitalism is about is trying to make the measuring sticks the things that actually matter to us, like how healthy we are, how our kids are doing. And then if someone does work that helps make their community stronger, that actually counts as economic progress.
What would that do? I mean, what would be the purpose of that, other than it makes sense and it's, rational as a human being, as an economic thing, why is that important?
It's crucial. Even the person who invented GDP 100 years ago, Simon Kuznets, said three things. He said, one, there's a terrible measurement for national well-being and we should never use it as that. He also said we should include parenthood and motherhood because they're so important. And the third thing he said was that we shouldn't include military defense spending in the calculation because it adds no economic value. So of course we've ignored all three of those things, and now we're writing GDP off a cliff. GDP's at record highs while our life expectancy is going down. And so if you see that this divergence is happening, then you have to line up your measurements so that it actually reflects how we are doing.
But you're almost...
Do you have an idea for what that new metric might look like? I mean, what is it?
Yes, I do. So I call it the American scorecard, and it keeps GDP as one data point, but it integrates health and life expectancy, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, childhood education and success rates, environmental quality. And we have numbers for these things. And so we can integrate them into our economic measurements. And then at the State of the Union every year as president, I will actually present the scorecard and say, as an example, 8 Americans are dying of drug overdoses every hour. That's terrible and unconscionable. So we're going to get that down by 50% over the next few years. And here's how we're going to do it. And then if individuals or companies or organizations put resources to work to move society in that direction, then they actually get rewarded economically. Because right now the problem is that all the economic rewards cut in this direction, and then all of the helping people rewards cut the other direction.
So that's what human-centered capitalism is, and I'm happy to say, Kara, that it's not very difficult. As president, one of my first acts will be to go down the street to the Bureau of Economic Analysis and say, GDP, very old, archaic. We have these other indicators, let's start using them in addition. That part is easy. Then the more interesting part becomes tying corporate and individual actions to progress on these measurements. But imagine a country where if I get some kid off drugs, or I help reintegrate an ex-convict into society, that actually counts as economic value, and then I somehow get rewarded for that. That is how we create the jobs of the future.
I think it's called the Netherlands, but...
So the positive vision of the future is that we realize that we're in an age of unprecedented prosperity and wealth and resources. And we start recalibrating the way we measure our economy. Instead of GDP, which is a measurement we made up almost 100 years ago, we start aiming towards our own health and mental health and childhood success rates and environmental quality and freedom from substance abuse. And things that we're actually excited about, and say these are actually going to be the new measurements of economic progress. We start distributing some of this $20 trillion bounty as fast as possible, and then get Americans around the country oriented towards actually trying to figure out what kind of work that they want to do, what kind of work that we want to do. We build new institutions to provide new pathways of structure, purpose, fulfillment, and meaning. We start holding more of these institutions that right now are bloated and inefficient. We start trying to bring them back into line with the rest of society in terms of like their mission and resources and alignment. And we have this American identity that stands the test of time, and we're able to look up and say, we're excited about our shared progress, and that when that person wins, even if that person's different from me, or that person lives in another part of the country, like I'm benefiting from that because I'm a shareholder of this country, and when that person wins, then my dividend goes up a tiny, tiny bit.